She spent decades running from a love that could destroy her. Now he's back, alive, shadowy, and thirsting for memories. But what she hid in the past might be far more cruel than what he came seeking. The ceiling fan spun lazily in the cramped office of the public defender's office, cutting through the hot March air in Chicago. Emily Wilson adjusted her glasses and sighed, observing the stack of case files that seemed to multiply on her scratched Formica desk. At 32, she had already learned that justice had the same bitter taste as the reheated coffee she'd been drinking since 6 in the morning. Another lost case, she murmured to herself, closing the file of a young man who would be convicted of drug trafficking just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The blue pen slipped between her sweaty fingers. Chicago was suffocating in this early autumn, and the public building's air conditioning had been broken for 3 weeks. Emily grew up in the South Side, where sirens were lullabies and dreams cost the price of 3 jobs. Daughter of Mary, a cleaning lady, and Joseph, a construction worker who died in a work accident when she was 16, she learned early that every opportunity had to be seized with tooth and nail. She studied law at a private college on a full scholarship, working days at a bakery and studying in the early hours by the light of a yellowed lamp. When she finally graduated, she turned down offers from private firms that promised tempting salaries to defend businessmen in labor lawsuits. She chose the public defender's office because she knew the taste of not having money for a decent lawyer. Each client she served carried a piece of her own story. The intercom rang, interrupting her thoughts. The secretary's voice echoed metallically. "Ms. Wilson, there's a client here. Urgent case. Send her in." The woman who crossed the door looked like she had been chewed up by life and spat back out. Andrea Fisher, 40-something, bleached hair with dark roots, nails bitten until they bled. Her cheap clothes tried to imitate elegance, but the fear in her eyes betrayed a raw vulnerability. "Ms. Wilson, I really need your help." Her voice came out choked. "They're saying I blackmailed an important man, but I swear it wasn't like that." Emily pointed to the plastic chair in front of her desk. "Sit down and tell me everything from the beginning." "No rush." Andrea settled in, wringing her hands in her lap. "I worked as a housekeeper in his home for 2 years. Mr. Richard Montgomery, that businessman who appears on television, you know, the one who wants to be governor." The name fell in the air like a stone thrown into still water. Emily felt something freeze in her stomach. Richard Montgomery. The same man whose business group had been responsible for the construction site where her father died. The same man who bought judges and lawyers to cover up the case, leaving her family without compensation and without justice. "Continue," said Emily, trying to keep her voice steady. He forced me to do things that weren't part of my job, you know." Andrea's eyes filled with tears. "Intimate things. Said if I didn't do them, he'd fire me and even tell my husband I was a slut. I needed the job, Ms. Wilson. My boy has Down syndrome, needs expensive medicine, physical therapy." The story unfolded like so many others Emily had already heard. Powerful boss, abusing vulnerable employee, emotional blackmail, sexual exploitation disguised as a favor. And how did it get to the blackmail accusation? "I recorded a conversation." Andrea lowered her voice as if the walls could hear. "He was forcing me again, saying some horrible things, and I recorded it on my phone, secretly. I thought about using it to defend myself, in case he made up some lie about me afterward. And then he discovered it. I don't know how, but he found out. He called me to his office in that mirrored building downtown and said he was going to destroy me, that he'd claim I tried to blackmail him with the recording. The next day, the police showed up at my house with a search warrant." Emily scribbled some notes, her brain quickly processing the implications of the case. Richard Montgomery wasn't just any businessman. He owned one of the largest construction companies in the country, had political connections that reached Washington, and his social foundation regularly appeared in the media doing charity work. An untouchable man, shielded by money and influence. Andrea, I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you ever ask him for money in exchange for not releasing the recording? Never, Ms. Wilson. I just wanted him to stop bothering me. I wanted to work in peace, take care of my son. Emily studied the face of the woman in front of her. 20 years defending people had taught her to identify when someone was lying. Andrea was telling the truth. She was a desperate woman who had fallen into a well-laid trap. Okay, I'll take your case. The relief on Andrea's face was instantaneous. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Thank you so much. I don't have much to pay, but don't worry about that now. First, let's win this case. After Andrea left, Emily was alone with her thoughts and memories. The last time she heard the name Richard Montgomery was at the hospital when the doctor said there was nothing more they could do for her father. The ribs pierced by poorly welded steel, the lungs soaked with blood, the glazed eyes looking at a point she could never reach. The lawsuit against the construction company was a massacre. Richard's lawyers transformed Joseph Wilson into a negligent worker who didn't follow safety regulations. They bought false reports, made witnesses disappear, made her mother cry at every hearing until she gave up fighting. Emily was 17 when she swore that one day she would make Richard Montgomery pay for everything. Today, 15 years later, fate was placing that opportunity in her hands, but she was no longer the angry girl from the South Side. She was a competent lawyer who knew that justice isn't achieved with a thirst for revenge, but with preparation, strategy, and a lot of patience. The following week, Emily immersed herself in the case with the dedication of someone digging for gold. She consulted jurisprudence, analyzed precedents, talked with colleagues who specialized in labor and criminal law. The strategy was clear. Prove that Andrea was a victim of sexual harassment and that the blackmail accusation was retaliation from her employer. The problem was that Richard Montgomery had the best lawyers in the country. His law firm occupied 3 floors of a building in the Gold Coast, overlooking Lake Michigan. Emily knew their reputation. They were relentless, well-paid, and had no scruples. The first hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Emily woke up at 5, took a long shower, put on her only black suit that had been a graduation present from college, and tied her hair in a strict bun. In the mirror, she saw the reflection of a determined woman, but inside she felt her stomach churning with nervousness. The criminal court building was as busy as always. Lawyers in expensive suits crossed the marble corridors, carrying leather briefcases, while defendants' family members waited on wooden benches with anguished expressions. Emily knew every corner of that building, every judge, every employee. It was her territory. She arrived early at the courtroom and organized her documents on the table. At 9 o'clock sharp, the door opened and Richard's defense team entered like a battalion. 3 lawyers in impeccable suits, 2 assistants carrying briefcases, and behind them all, Richard Montgomery. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. 15 years had passed, but she would recognize that posture anywhere. Tall, broad shoulders, gray hair combed back, well-groomed beard. He wore a navy blue suit that probably cost more than her annual salary, but it was his eyes that hit her like a punch to the stomach. Dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to see through people. He scanned the room until his gaze met hers. For a second that seemed eternal, they looked at each other. Emily saw something move in those dark eyes. Surprise, recognition, interest. Richard walked to the table next to hers and sat down. He leaned slightly toward her and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "Emily Wilson, daughter of Joseph Wilson, who died at the Glenview site in 2008. Her blood froze. He remembered. After all these years, all those lawsuits, all those lives he probably destroyed, he remembered her father. "I see you've done your homework," she responded in the same low tone, without breaking eye contact. I always do. An almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth. Interesting how fate works, isn't it? Before she could respond, the judge entered the room and everyone stood up. The hearing began, but Emily could barely concentrate on the prosecutor's words. She felt Richard's gaze on her, as if he were studying every movement, every expression, every breath. Throughout the session, which lasted almost 2 hours, she was impeccable. She presented her arguments clearly, questioned witnesses with precision, defended Andrea with the passion of someone fighting for real justice. But at each pause, each silence, she felt his eyes on her skin like a burn. When the judge closed the hearing, setting the next date, Richard stood up before everyone else. He walked over to Emily, who was gathering her papers, and stopped right beside her. "Ms. Wilson." His voice was deep, controlled, but there was something more underneath. "May I speak with you for a moment?" In private, his lawyers made a move to approach, but Richard made a discreet gesture for them to stay put. Emily looked at him, trying to maintain a neutral expression. "Right here. I prefer a more private location. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here, you know it?" "I do. Meet me there in half an hour." It wasn't a request. It was almost an order, spoken with the naturalness of someone accustomed to being obeyed, but there was something in his eyes that made Emily nod. "Half an hour," she confirmed. Richard walked away without saying anything more, followed by his army of lawyers. Emily was left alone in the courtroom, with her heart beating erratically and a certainty growing in her chest. This case would change her life forever. 30 minutes later, she pushed the glass door of Jack's Diner, a simple place where lawyers, court employees and police officers mingled at yellowed formica tables. Richard was already there, sitting at a corner table, his back to the wall. He had taken off his jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt. He seemed more human this way, less shielded. Emily approached and sat in the chair opposite him. He was absently stirring the sugar in his coffee, as if searching for the right words. "Thank you for coming," he finally said, raising his eyes to her. "What do you want, Richard?" The use of his first name made him smile again, in that almost imperceptible way. Straight to the point. "I like that." He leaned back in his chair. "I want you to withdraw Andrea's defense." "And why would I do that?" "Because she's guilty, Emily, and you know it." "I know she's a victim of sexual harassment." "And I know you're using your power to destroy an innocent woman." Richard slowly shook his head. "You don't know anything about this situation." "Then explain it to me." He remained silent for a moment, studying her face. Emily felt something strange happen. Beneath the anger, beneath the hatred she had cultivated for 15 years, there was an electric current passing between them. A tension that had nothing to do with the case or with the past. "Andrea Fisher is not who you think she is," he finally said. "She's tried this scam before, with other employers. She has a history of blackmailing married men in vulnerable positions." "Prove it." Richard opened a folder that was next to his coffee and slid some papers across the table. Private investigator reports, recorded conversations, photographs of Andrea leaving hotels with different men. Emily leafed through the documents, feeling the ground disappear beneath her feet. The evidence was solid, detailed, impossible to ignore. "Why are you showing me this? Why didn't you present it at the hearing?" "Because I want to give you a chance to walk away from this with dignity. You're a good lawyer, Emily. You don't deserve to have your name tarnished defending a criminal." She raised her eyes from the papers and met his. There was something there that confused her. It wasn't just professional interest, it was personal, intense. "And what do you gain from this?" "Maybe the chance for an honest conversation with you." "No lawyers, no lawsuits, no past in the middle?" Her heart raced. "The past will always be in the middle, Richard. You killed my father." The phrase came out more raw than she intended. Richard recoiled as if he had been slapped. "I didn't kill anyone, Emily. Your company, your responsibility. You're right." He leaned forward, bringing his face closer to hers. and not a day goes by that I don't think about it." The sincerity in his voice disarmed her. For 15 years, she had imagined this man as a monster without remorse. Seeing vulnerability in his eyes was disturbing. "Why should I believe you?" "Because you know when someone is lying. It's your job. Look into my eyes and tell me if I'm lying." Emily stared at him. His dark eyes were fixed on hers, without wavering, without blinking. There was pain there, guilt, and something else she couldn't identify. "Withdraw the case, Emily," he repeated, but now the tone was almost a plea. "And give me a chance to explain everything. What happened to your father? What's happening now? What could happen between us? Between us!" She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping on the cement floor. "There is no us, Richard. There never will be." He also stood up, standing very close to her. Emily could smell his cologne, an expensive and masculine fragrance that made something stir in her lower belly. "No," he whispered, his eyes slowly scanning her face. "Then why are you trembling?" Emily looked at her own hands and realized he was right. She was trembling. With anger, with nervousness, with an attraction she didn't want to admit even to herself. "Because you disgust me," she lied. Richard smiled, a slow and dangerous smile. "Liar." He stepped back, picked up his jacket and folder. Before leaving, he stopped beside her and whispered right in her ear, "When you decide to stop lying to yourself, call me." He left a card on the table and walked out of the diner, leaving Emily alone with her racing heart and a frightening certainty. The game had only just begun. Emily didn't sleep that night. She stayed on the balcony of her apartment in Logan Square, smoking cigarettes she had quit years ago, watching Chicago's lights blink like dead stars. Richard's card was on the coffee table, next to the documents he had shown her. The evidence against Andrea was too solid to ignore, but admitting it meant admitting she had been deceived. And worse, it meant giving reason to the man she had hated for 15 years. Her cell phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was Andrea, her voice choked with tears. "Ms. Wilson, they invaded my house again. They took my boy." "What do you mean they took him? Who?" "Child Protective Services. They said I'm a negligent mother, that I expose him to risky situations. My Davy is scared. He doesn't understand anything. Please help me." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the headache pulse in her temples. "Where are you now?" "At my sister's house in Englewood. Ms. Wilson, I can't take it anymore. They're destroying me bit by bit. Stay there. I'll sort this out." After hanging up, Emily picked up Richard's card and observed it for long minutes. It was a simple card, just the name and a cell phone number, no company, no titles, as if he wanted her to contact him not as a businessman, but as a man. She dialed the number before she could regret it. "Emily!" His voice sounded still sleepy, but not surprised, as if he had been waiting for the call. "You had her son taken away." "Good morning to you too." A pause. "Where are you?" "At home." "Answer my question." "I didn't order anything, but I didn't prevent it either." His brutal honesty disarmed her. "What kind of man does that to a child? The kind who knows that sometimes you need to press the right points to get what you want. And what do you want, Richard?" "You know what I want." The silence stretched between them like a razor wire. Emily could hear her own breathing echoing on the phone. "Let's meet," she finally said, "but not in a diner and not with your lawyers around." "Where?" "You know the Chicago French Market, the oyster bar on the upper level?" "I know it." "Noon. And Richard?" "Yes?" "If you're lying about not having ordered the child to be taken away, I'll find out. And then there won't be any conversation that will resolve it." She hung up before he could respond. The Chicago French Market was bustling on a Tuesday at noon. Tourists photographed the colorful displays while Chicagoans shopped among the stalls of fruits, cheeses, and spices. The smell of fresh bread, mixed with the aroma of coffee, hung in the humid air. Emily climbed the iron stairs to the upper level, where the oyster bar was located. a traditional spot frequented by downtown merchants and lawyers. Richard was already there, seated at a corner table, wearing dark jeans and a grey linen shirt. Without the suit, he looked younger, more accessible. But his eyes still had that intensity that made her feel transparent. She sat across from him without ceremony. "Where's the child?" "Good afternoon, Emily. You look beautiful today." "Don't provoke me. Where's the boy?" Richard sighed and signaled to the waiter. "2 beers, he ordered, then turned back to her. "The boy's fine, in a temporary foster home on the south side. Decent place with qualified professionals." "That doesn't answer my question. I know the social worker responsible for the case, Monica Rivera. She owes me some favors." Emily felt her blood boil. "You bought a public official. I paid for her children's education at a private school 3 years ago, when her husband lost his job and she couldn't keep the kids in school. And now you're collecting the debt." Now I reminded her that there are people who remember favors received. The waiter brought the beers. Emily took hers and took a long sip, trying to process the calculated coldness of the man in front of her. "You're a psychopath," she finally said. "I'm a businessman. The difference is that I own what I do, and I should admire you for that." Richard leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You should understand me. How many times have you made questionable deals to get a client acquitted? How many times have you closed your eyes to small lies if it meant saving someone from jail?" Emily wanted to deny it, but the words died in her throat. He was right. Real justice was rarely as clean as in law books. This is different. Is it? Why? Because I fight for the oppressed. You crush them. I protect what's mine, like you protect what's yours. A child is not a bargaining chip, Richard. I agree. He took a sip of his beer without taking his eyes off her. That's why I'll arrange for him to return home tonight. Emily blinked, confused. Just like that? Just like that. Because you asked me to. I didn't ask for anything. I demanded. For me, it amounted to the same thing. There was something in his voice that made her stomach turn. It wasn't just power. It was something more dangerous. It was genuine interest. And in return, you listen to what I have to tell you about your father, about that night. Emily felt the world stop around her. The market noise became a distant buzz. What night? The night he died. September 15th, 2008. You were 17. Your mother worked cleaning offices downtown. You studied at Hammond High in the morning and worked at a bakery in the afternoon. The precision of the details chilled her. How do you know all this? Because I was there. Where? At the construction site. When it happened. Emily's world collapsed again. During all these years, she had imagined Richard as a distant executive, making decisions in air-conditioned rooms without ever getting his hands dirty. Discovering that he was physically present at the moment of her father's death changed everything. You saw him die? Richard nodded slowly. I saw, and it was because of me. The words came out like punches. Emily felt nausea rise in her throat. Explain that now. Not here. He looked around at the tables full of people. Let's go somewhere more private. I'm not going anywhere with you. Then I'll tell you right here, and everyone will hear. His voice became lower, more dangerous. Your father discovered that some of our engineers were using second-rate materials in the structures. Cheap steel, inadequate welding. He came to me directly, bypassed the supervisors. Emily felt her hands trembling. And you ordered him killed. I ordered him promoted, offered him the position of quality supervisor with a salary increase so that he would be responsible for inspecting the very construction site where he had discovered the problem. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. I wanted someone honest, watching over safety, someone who wouldn't turn a blind eye to irregularities. Emily shook her head, confused. Then why did he die? Richard looked away for the first time. Because the others didn't want him to accept the promotion, because they knew he would discover everything that was being done wrong. Others who? My partner at the time. My own brother. The confession came out as a whisper. Emily saw genuine pain in his eyes. Your brother killed my father? My brother arranged an accident. He loosened the screws on the structure where your father was working that afternoon. He knew that he always stayed late, alone, checking the critical points of the site. The bar around Emily seemed to spin. She held onto the edge of the table to keep from fainting. And when did you know about this? That same night, he told me, thinking I would congratulate him on the initiative. Richard clenched his fists on the table, said he had solved our problem. And what did you do? What I should have done 15 years ago. He looked directly into her eyes. I killed him. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily felt the blood pulsing in her temples, her heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. You're lying. I'm not. Prove it. Richard took his phone from his pocket and showed an old photo. Two smiling men, arms around each other's shoulders, similar, but Richard was taller, stronger. This is my brother Marcus. Died in a car accident 3 days after your father's death. Car rolled over on the Kennedy Expressway in the early morning. Brakes failed. Emily studied the photo, then his face. You sabotaged his car. I delivered justice. You committed murder. I did, and I would do it again. The coldness with which he said this terrified and excited her at the same time. There was something primitive, visceral in the idea that he had killed to avenge her father. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know who I really am. Not the businessman you hate, not the monster you imagined. I'm a man who made choices. Some right, some wrong, but always taking responsibility for the consequences. Emily stood up abruptly. I need to leave. Emily, wait. No. She was already moving away from the table. This is too much madness. You are too much madness. Richard stood up too and followed her between the tables at the bar. When they got near the stairs, he gently but firmly held her arm. Look at me, he said softly. Emily turned to him, furious. Let me go. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't feel anything. She tried to pull away, but he held both her arms, forcing her to face him. They were very close now, too close. Emily could feel the heat emanating from his body, the scent of his warm skin. Tell me that when I touch you, you don't feel anything, he repeated, his voice husky. I feel disgust, she lied. Liar. His eyes dropped to her mouth. Your body doesn't know how to lie like your head does. And it was true. Despite all the confusion, all the anger, all the shock of the revelations, Emily felt an electric current running through her skin where he touched her. She felt her lower belly contracting, her breathing becoming irregular. Let me go, she repeated, but her voice came out without conviction. Instead of letting go, Richard came closer. Their faces were inches apart. She could see the details of his dark eyes, the small wrinkles at the corners, the texture of his tanned skin. You want to hate me, he whispered. It would be so much easier if you could really hate me. I can. You can't. His mouth almost touching hers. And that terrifies you. Emily felt her legs weaken. For a moment she almost surrendered, almost closed her eyes and let it happen. But at the last second, she violently pulled away. Don't touch me, she said, her voice trembling with anger and repressed desire. Richard smiled, a slow and dangerous smile. Okay, for now. Emily ran down the stairs, pushing people out of the way. She only stopped when she reached the street, breathless, with her heart racing. She looked back and saw Richard on the upper level, watching her with that intense expression. She took out her phone and dialed a number. Andrea, it's Emily. I'm withdrawing your defense. Ms. Wilson, why? What happened? What happened is that you lied to me from the beginning. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I can explain. You don't need to. I already know everything. Ms. Wilson, please, I need the money. My son. Your son has already been returned to you, and you'll never have to worry about money again. What do you mean? Because you're going to receive a generous settlement not to sue anyone, and you're going to disappear from my life." Emily hung up without waiting for a response. She knew she was doing the right thing legally, but she felt as if she had sold her soul. Her phone rang almost immediately. It was Richard. "Thank you," he said when she answered. "Don't thank me. I did what was right. I know it wasn't easy. You don't know anything about me. I know more than you imagine." A pause. "Have dinner with me tonight." No, that wasn't a request. And it wasn't a negotiation. The answer is no. 8 o'clock, a linear restaurant in Lincoln Park. "I'm not going." "Yes, you are. Because you need to know the rest of the story." "What rest?" "The real reason why I killed my brother and what that has to do with you." The call dropped. Emily stood in the middle of the street, phone in hand, feeling like she was being pulled into an abyss from which she might not be able to escape. At 7:30 that night, she was getting ready in the bathroom of her apartment. She had chosen a simple black dress that accentuated her silhouette well, subtle makeup, hair loose on her shoulders. She didn't want to admit that she was getting dolled up for him, but that was exactly what she was doing. Alinea was one of the most expensive restaurants in Chicago. Emily had never set foot there, but she knew that a meal cost more than her weekly salary. The maître d' led her to a reserved table in a discreet corner where Richard was already waiting. He stood up when she approached, a gesture of chivalry that caught her off guard. He wore a dark suit without a tie, the white shirt open at the collar. He was devastatingly handsome. "I thought you wouldn't come," he said, pulling out the chair for her. "I thought so too." They sat down and studied each other for a moment. The restaurant was full, but their table seemed isolated from the rest of the world. "Ordered wine?" she asked, noticing the bottle already open. "Burgundy 2015. I thought you might like it." "How do you know what I like?" "Intuition." The sommelier poured the wine. Emily took a sip and admitted reluctantly that it was delicious. "So," she said, setting down the glass, "what is this story you need to tell me?" Richard twirled the glass between his fingers, observing the ruby liquid. "My brother didn't kill your father just for money. There was a personal motive." "What motive?" "He was obsessed with you." Emily felt her blood freeze. "What do you mean?" "He followed you, knew your routine, where you studied, where you worked, had photos of you." "That's impossible. I never saw him in my life." "But he saw you. Every week, when he went to the site. You passed by bus in front of the construction site every day, coming back from school. He would watch." The revelation was like a punch to the stomach. Emily vaguely remembered having noticed a man looking at her a few times, but never gave it importance. "And what does this have to do with my father's death?" "Your father found out. Saw Marcus following you, photographing you, threatened to report him to the police." The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in Emily's mind. "So he killed my father to protect himself, to protect us. He knew that if he was arrested, I would be investigated too. Our company would fall." "And how did you discover this?" Richard hesitated. "I found the photos in his office. Hundreds of photos of you, some taken up close, as if he had followed you all the way home." Emily felt nausea. "My God, that's when I realized my brother was sick and dangerous. So you killed him to protect me. I killed him to protect you and to avenge your father." The waiter approached to take their order, but Richard made a gesture for him to move away. "Aren't you hungry?" he asked. "I lost my appetite." "I understand." They remained silent for a few minutes. Emily tried to process everything she had heard. The image she had of Richard was fragmenting, recomposing into something completely different. "Why did you never tell me this before?" "Because you were a girl. Because I didn't want you to carry this weight." "And why are you telling me now?" Richard leaned forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "Because I'm not the same man I was 15 years ago. And you're not the same girl. And what does that mean? It means I can tell you the truth, all of it. There's more. There's always more, Emily. She took another sip of wine, feeling the alcohol gently burn her throat. Then tell me. I watched you grow up, from a distance, but I watched. I knew when you entered college, when you graduated, when you passed the public defender exam. I knew about your cases, your victories, your defeats. You spied on me. I worried about you. That's sick, Richard. It's protection, unauthorized protection. The best protection is never authorized. Emily stood up abruptly. I'm leaving. No, you're not. Are you going to stop me? Richard also stood up and walked over to her. They stood face to face in the middle of the elegant restaurant, oblivious to the curious glances from other diners. I'm not going to stop you, he said softly, but I'm going to ask you to stay. Why? Because there's one last thing I need to tell you. What? Richard hesitated as if gathering courage. When he spoke, his voice came out almost inaudible. I'm in love with you. Have been for 15 years. Emily's world stopped spinning. His words echoed in her mind like an infinite echo. You're lying. I'm not. That's impossible. Why? Because you don't even really know me. I know you better than anyone in the world. Emily felt her legs weaken. I need to get out of here. This time, Richard didn't try to stop her. He just watched her walk away, his eyes burning into her back like hot iron. At the restaurant door, Emily stopped and turned around. Richard was still standing in the same place, watching her with an expression of vulnerability she had never seen before. For a moment she almost went back, almost ran back into his arms and let whatever had to happen, happen. But at the last second, she walked out the door and disappeared into the Chicago night, leaving behind the man who had changed her life forever. Emily spent the next 3 days avoiding any place where she might run into Richard. She cancelled appointments downtown, asked colleagues to cover her hearings, and even changed her route to work. But Chicago was a city too big and too small at the same time, and she knew she couldn't hide forever. The first surprise came on a rainy Thursday. Emily was organizing her cases when the secretary announced a visitor. She expected to see a client, but who entered her office was an elegant woman, around 70, wearing an impeccable beige suit and carrying a Hermes bag that cost more than Emily's car. You must be Emily Wilson, said the woman, sitting down without being invited. Her voice had the refined accent of Chicago's elite, each word pronounced with surgical precision. Yes, I am. How can I help you? I'm Helen Montgomery, Richard's mother. Emily's blood froze. The woman in front of her was of an austere beauty, the kind of elegance that came from generations of good taste and lots of money. Her blue eyes were cold as ice, but there was a sharp intelligence behind them. I don't know what you want to talk to me about. Of course you do. Helen crossed her legs and studied Emily with the look of someone evaluating an investment. My son is obsessed with you, and this needs to stop. I have no control over your son's obsessions. No? Then why has he cancelled 3 important meetings this week to drive around the city looking for you? The information made Emily's stomach contract. Imagining Richard looking for her, disturbed, affected her in a way she didn't want to admit. What do you want from me? Helen opened her purse and took out a thick envelope. $500,000. For you to disappear from his life. Emily looked at the envelope without touching it. Do you think I'm some kind of prostitute? I think you're an intelligent woman who knows how to recognize an opportunity when she sees one. And if I don't accept? Helen's smile was icy. Then I'll have to take more drastic measures. What kind of measures? The kind a mother takes to protect her son from a bad influence. Emily stood up, furious. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. I know you're the daughter of a dead construction worker. I know your mother cleans offices at night to pay the bills. I know you live in a 2-room apartment in Logan Square and that your biggest luxury is the $15 wine you buy at the supermarket on Saturdays. Each word was spoken like a precise stab. Emily felt humiliation burn in her cheeks. "And I also know," continued Helen, "that you have no idea of the world you're trying to enter. Richard isn't just a rich businessman, dear. He's part of a power structure that you don't even dream exists. Politicians, judges, businessmen, people who can destroy your career with one phone call. Is that a threat? It's reality." Helen stood up and smoothed her skirt with an elegant gesture. "You have until Monday to decide. After that, I can't guarantee the offer will still stand." She left the envelope on the desk and walked out without saying goodbye. Emily was left alone, looking at that paper rectangle that represented more money than she would earn in 5 years of work. Her phone rang. It was Richard. "Don't answer," she said to herself. But she did. "My mother was there," was the first thing he said. "She was. What did she offer you?" "Money." "How much?" "500,000. Richard laughed, a bitter sound. "She's being generous. Normally she offers less." "Normally? You're not the first woman she's tried to buy off to stay away from me." Emily felt a pang of jealousy that irritated her. And did the others accept? "All of them. All of them. All of them, Emily. My mother has a special talent for identifying the price of each person. And what do you think is my price?" There was a long pause. When Richard spoke, his voice was different, more vulnerable. "I hope you don't have a price." "Everyone has a price, Richard. Not you. How can you be so sure? Because you're just like your father." The comparison disarmed her. "Don't talk about my father." "Why not? He was a man of integrity, incorruptible, just like you." "You don't know me. I know you better than you imagine." Emily looked at the envelope on the desk. "Your mother gave me until Monday." "And what are you going to do?" "I don't know. Have dinner with me tonight. Let me show you something." "No, please." The word came out so low, so laden with need, that Emily felt something move in her chest. "Just one thing," she finally said, "and then you leave me alone. If that's what you want." "That's what I want." Liar. This time it was she who hung up first. At 8 in the evening, Emily was at the door of a residential building in Lincoln Park. It wasn't a restaurant, as she had expected. It was the building where Richard lived. He met her in the lobby, wearing jeans and a black shirt. Without the suit, he looked younger, more human. They rode up in silence to the 32nd floor. The apartment was exactly what she expected. Minimalist, expensive, with a spectacular view of the city. But what surprised her were the walls. Instead of expensive artwork, they were covered with photographs, hundreds of them. "My God," she murmured, approaching. They were photos of Chicago. Not postcard Chicago, but the real city, slums, workers, children playing in the street, ordinary people living their ordinary lives. The images were powerful, raw, full of humanity. "You took these photos?" "It's been my hobby for 15 years. Emily moved through the room, studying each image. There was a devastating beauty in those photographs, a sensitivity she never imagined Richard possessed. "Why do you do this?" "Because it's the real Chicago, the one that interests me." "And why are you showing me?" Richard approached, stopping right behind her. Emily could feel the heat of his body radiating on her back. "Because I want you to see who I really am. Not the businessman, not the rich guy. Me." Emily turned around, coming face to face with him. They were very close, too close. "And who are you really?" "Someone who fell in love with a 17-year-old girl and never managed to forget. Someone who built an empire but feels empty every night. Someone who takes photos of poor people because it's the only thing that still makes him feel something." His words were like blades, cutting through all the defenses she had built. "Richard, I know you hate me. I know you have reasons. But I also know you feel something when you're near me. I just feel confusion. Confusion is a beginning." He raised his hand and gently touched her face. Emily shivered, but didn't pull away. "We can't," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because it's wrong. Because you represented everything I hated, because you're afraid. I'm not afraid of you. No, you're afraid of yourself. And it was true. Emily was afraid of what she felt when she looked at him, of the desire that grew in her lower belly when he touched her, of the urge to surrender that fought against all logic. I should leave, she said, but didn't move. You should. Your mother is right. We're from different worlds. We are. This could never work. Never. Then why can't I stop thinking about you? The question came out before she could prevent it. Richard smiled, a slow and dangerous smile. Because you're in love too. I'm not. You are. And that terrifies you. Emily tried to step back, but Richard gently held her wrists. Kiss me, he asked. No, please. I can't. You can. It's just a choice. And then, in a decision that defied all logic, all prudence, all her history, Emily leaned forward and kissed Richard Montgomery. The kiss was electric, desperate, 15 years of accumulated tension exploding in one moment. His hands tangled in her hair, hers clutched at his shirt. It was more than desire, it was need. When they finally separated, both were breathless. My God, murmured Emily, what am I doing? Stopping fighting against the inevitable. Richard pulled her closer, and this time she didn't resist. Their bodies fit perfectly, as if they had been designed for each other. This is madness, she whispered against his mouth, the best madness of my life. They kissed again, with more urgency. Richard's hands traced the curves of her body, while Emily felt all resistance melting away. When he started kissing her neck, she moaned softly. Richard, Shh. He silenced her with another kiss. Don't think, just feel. And she tried. For a few precious minutes, she managed to stop thinking and just feel. The taste of his mouth, the smell of his warm skin, the weight of his large hands tracing her body. But then reality returned like a punch. No, she said, pulling away abruptly. No, this is wrong. Emily, you killed a man, Richard. Your own brother. To protect you. I didn't ask for protection. I didn't know anything. And if you had known he was obsessed with you, that he followed you, that he had plans for you, what would you have done? Emily couldn't answer. The truth was that she was terrified just thinking about what might have happened if Marcus had remained alive, obsessed with her. That doesn't justify murder. It does for me. The coldness with which he said this chilled her. Richard felt no remorse. He would do it all again if necessary. I need to leave, she said, looking for her purse. You won't. Are you going to stop me? I'm going to convince you. Before she could react, Richard pulled her to one of the windows. Outside, Chicago sparkled like a sea of lights. See that housing project down there? He pointed to a set of precarious houses nestled between commercial buildings. I see it. My company built a community center there, daycare, health clinic, computer school. So what? So it wasn't for marketing, it was because a 17-year-old girl taught me that there are people who deserve chances. Emily looked at him, confused. What girl? You. Back then, after your father died, you went to the funerals of several workers who worked at the site. Not because you knew them, but because no one deserves to die alone. The memory returned like a wave. Emily vaguely remembered having gone to some funerals, driven by an inexplicable need to honor those forgotten men. How do you know that? Because I was there, at all of them. Why? Because I wanted to understand what kind of person you were. And I discovered you were the kind of person who made me want to be better. His words disarmed her. For 15 years, she was certain Richard was a monster. Discovering that he had changed because of her, that his charitable actions were inspired by her teenage compassion, jumbled everything she believed. This doesn't change anything, she said, but her voice came out without conviction. It changes everything. Richard approached again, but this time he didn't try to touch her. He just stood there, close enough for her to feel his presence. I built all this. He made a gesture encompassing the apartment, the view, the life of luxury. Because I thought that's what you deserved, that when we met again I could offer you the world. I never asked for the world. No. You only asked for justice, and I tried to give that too. How? Richard went to a desk in the corner of the room and returned with a folder. Inside, dozens of documents, photos, reports. For the last 15 years, I've investigated all cases of negligence in construction in Chicago. When I found those responsible, I destroyed them. Financially, professionally, personally, Emily leafed through the documents, incredulous. There were hundreds of cases, thousands of pages of meticulous investigation. You did all this for me, for you, for your father, for all the workers who died because someone wanted to save money. My God, Richard, this is obsession. It's love. The word hung in the air between them. Emily felt the ground open beneath her feet. You don't love me. You don't even really know me. I know you better than anyone. I know you take your coffee without sugar but drink cappuccino on Sundays. I know you read detective novels before sleeping. I know you cry watching romance movies, even while trying to hide it. I know you have a scar on your left knee from when you fell off a bicycle at 8 years old. Emily instinctively touched the scar under her pants. How do you know that? Because I paid attention to every detail, every gesture, every moment. That's sick. It's devotion. It's the same thing your brother did. The comparison was like a slap. Richard recoiled as if he had been punched. No, he said, his voice cutting. It's not the same thing. Isn't it? You both spied on me. You both became obsessed with me. I never followed you home, never took photos without permission, never threatened you. But you watched me from a distance. To protect you. Unauthorized protection is still invasion of privacy. Richard ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. You're right. You're absolutely right to hate me. I don't hate you. No, I don't know what I feel for you. And that terrifies me. They looked at each other for long minutes. Emily saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the raw need, the fear of being rejected. It was disturbing to see such a powerful man completely disarmed. What do you want from me, Richard? Really? I want a chance. A chance for what? To love you the right way, without secrets, without obsession, without guilt. And if I can't forgive you for what you did, then I'll wait. How long? As long as necessary. Emily walked to the window and watched the city below. Millions of people living their lives, loving, suffering, making decisions that changed everything. She was about to make one of those decisions. Your mother will never accept it. My mother will have to accept it. And society, the media, everyone will say I'm a gold digger. And do you care what they'll say? Emily thought about the question. All her life, she had fought against prejudices, against those who thought she didn't deserve to be where she was. If she started to care about other people's opinions now, she would never have peace. No, she finally said. I don't care. Richard approached slowly, like someone approaching an injured animal. Then, what's the problem? The problem is that I still don't know if I can trust you. What do I need to do to earn your trust? Emily turned to him. You need to stop trying to control me. Stop making decisions for me. Stop thinking you know what's best for me. And if I promise that, your promises don't mean anything to me yet, then what does? Emily took a deep breath. Time, honesty, and you having patience with my process. What process? The process of discovering if I can love a man who has already killed for me. The confession came out before she could prevent it. Richard stood motionless, processing what he had heard. You just said you could love me? Emily realized what she had said and felt her face heat up. I said, I need to discover if I can. It's a start. It's all I can offer you now. Richard nodded slowly. Then I'll accept what you can offer. They looked at each other, both knowing they had crossed a line from which there was no return. I should leave now, Emily said. You should, but I don't want to. Then stay. And after? What happens after? Richard smiled, a smile different from all she had seen, soft, hopeful, genuine. After, we figure it out together. And for the first time in 15 years, Emily allowed herself to imagine a future that included Richard Montgomery. It was scary, it was dangerous, it was completely insane, but it was also the first time she felt truly alive. His phone rang, interrupting the moment. Richard looked at the screen and frowned. "It's my mother," he said. "Answer it." "I don't want to." "Answer it, Richard. She won't give up until she can talk to you," he answered reluctantly. "Hello, Mother." Emily could hear Helen's furious voice on the other end of the line, but couldn't make out the words. "No, Mother, she didn't accept your money," Richard said, looking at Emily. "And she won't accept it." More shouting from the other end. "That's none of your business," he continued, his voice growing harder. "I'm a grown man, and I can choose who I have a relationship with." Helen said something that made Richard go pale. "You wouldn't do that," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Do what?" Emily asked. Richard hung up the phone and turned to her with a grim expression. "My mother decided to play hardball." "What do you mean?" "She's going to call a press conference tomorrow. She's going to say you're blackmailing me, that you're trying to destroy our family." Emily felt her blood freeze. "Can she do that?" "She can do anything. She has journalists on her payroll, editors who owe her favors." "And what does that mean for me?" Richard pulled her close. "It means our first battle will be much sooner than we expected." Ours, Emily. If you're with me, we're in this together." Emily looked into his eyes and saw determination, protection, and something that might be real love. "I'm with you," she said, surprising herself. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm with you anyway." Richard smiled and kissed her softly. This time she didn't pull away. Morning arrived grey and heavy, as if even the Chicago sky sensed the storm that was about to break. Emily woke up on Richard's apartment sofa, covered by a cashmere blanket that he had placed over her during the night. They hadn't slept together. She had insisted on maintaining that barrier, at least for now, but the physical proximity had been comforting in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Richard was already awake, sitting on the balcony with his laptop open, talking quietly on the phone. He was wearing only a grey t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair tousled from sleep. There was something devastatingly intimate about seeing him like this, stripped of all his business posture. "The lawyers are trying to get an injunction to prevent the press conference," he said when he saw her awake. "But I doubt they'll succeed. My mother has judges in her pocket." Emily stretched, trying to dispel the tension in her muscles. "What time is the press conference?" 10 in the morning, 2 hours from now." "And what's the plan?" Richard closed the laptop and turned to her. "We don't have a plan. We just have the truth. The truth is too complicated for a press conference. Then we simplify it." Emily went to the window. Below, the city was bustling, oblivious to the drama that was about to unfold. How do you simplify 15 years of obsession, a murder, and a forbidden passion? By saying that two people fell in love, despite all the reasons not to fall in love. Your mother won't accept that version. My mother will have to accept it. Emily's phone rang. It was her mother, Mary. "Daughter, there's something strange on television." The woman's voice was worried. "They're saying your name, saying you got involved with a rich businessman. What's this all about?" Emily closed her eyes. She had completely forgotten how her mother would react to all this. "Mom, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you're getting involved with the son of a bitch who killed your father." Mary's raw language, who rarely cursed, showed the extent of her outrage. "It wasn't him who killed Dad, Mom. It was his brother. And what's the difference? They're all the same, those rich people. They step on us and then pretend they're saints." "Mom, let me tell you the whole story, in person." "I don't want to hear any story. I want you to end this madness before you get hurt." "I can't do that." "Why not?" Emily looked at Richard, who pretended not to be listening to the conversation. Because I fell in love with him. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Oh my God, Mary finally murmured. What did I do wrong in raising you? You didn't do anything wrong. You raised me to be strong, to fight for what I believe in, and I believe in him. You believe in a man you've known for a week. I believe in a man who spent 15 years trying to get justice for Dad. Mary hung up without saying goodbye. Emily was left with the phone in her hand, feeling her heart break. Losing her mother's support was like losing the ground beneath her feet. Richard approached and pulled her into his arms. She'll understand. No, she won't. And she's right not to understand. Emily. She's right, Richard. I fell in love with you in a week. That's insane. Sometimes insanity is the only answer to an insane world. They held each other for a few minutes until Richard's phone rang again. This time it was his lawyer. We couldn't get the injunction, Richard said after hanging up. The press conference is going to happen. Then let's go. No, you stay here. What do you mean I stay here? This is between me and my mother. Emily pulled away, indignant. You're doing exactly what you promised not to do. You're making decisions for me. I'm protecting you. I don't want protection. I want to participate in my own life. Richard ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. Emily, you don't understand. My mother is dangerous when she wants to destroy someone. She'll attack you in ways you can't even imagine. Then I'd better be there to defend myself. And if she says something that changes your opinion of me. The vulnerability in his voice disarmed her. What kind of thing? Things from my past, decisions I made, people I hurt. Are there other people you hurt? Richard looked away. There are things about me you still don't know. Then tell me. Not here. Not now. Richard, if we're going to face this together, I need to know everything. He looked at her for long seconds, as if assessing how much of the truth she could bear to hear. Okay, he finally said, but after the press conference. First, we survive my mother's attack. The press conference was scheduled to take place in the grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel in Chicago. Helen had chosen the most elegant venue possible, a setting that reinforced her social position and made any opposition automatically inferior. Emily and Richard arrived together, he in an impeccable dark suit, she wearing the same black suit she wore in court, but this time with a red blouse underneath, a silent declaration that she wasn't hiding. The room was packed with journalists, photographers, and television cameras. Emily recognized reporters from major newspapers and magazines in the country. Helen had summoned the mainstream media to witness the public execution of her potential daughter-in-law. Helen was seated at an elevated table like an empress on her throne. She wore an immaculate white suit, her hair pulled back in a perfect bun, her jewelry discreet but very expensive. Next to her, a lawyer that Emily recognized as one of the most famous criminal attorneys in the country. When Richard and Emily entered the room, a murmur ran through the audience. Flashes went off, cameramen adjusted their cameras. Helen observed them with an icy smile. My son decided to join us, she said into the microphone, her voice echoing through the hall. How opportune. Richard walked to a chair in the front row, Emily at his side. He showed no nervousness, but she could feel the tension emanating from his body. I called this press conference, Helen began, to clarify the unfortunate situation in which my son finds himself. Richard is the victim of a well-elaborated blackmail by an unscrupulous lawyer who took advantage of his generous nature. The journalists took notes frantically. Emily felt her blood boil, but Richard held her hand, a silent signal for her to control herself. Miss Emily Wilson, Helen continued, who presents herself as a defender of the poor and oppressed, is actually an opportunist who saw in my son a chance for quick social ascension. That's a lie, Emily whispered, but Richard squeezed her hand harder. Hold on, he murmured back. Let her finish. This woman, Helen made a dramatic pause. Discovered tragedies from our family's past and is using this information to emotionally blackmail my son. She knows that Richard feels guilty about the accidental death of workers at our construction sites and is exploiting this guilt for her own ends. A journalist raised his hand. Mrs. Montgomery, what do you have to say about the rumors that your son and Ms. Wilson have a romantic relationship? Helen smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My son is a sensitive man who has always been concerned with social issues. Unfortunately, this sensitivity makes him vulnerable to ill-intentioned people who know how to manipulate his feelings. And Ms. Wilson is here, present, another journalist observed. Would you like to make a statement? All eyes turned to Emily. The cameras moved in her direction like predators sniffing blood. She felt her mouth go dry, her heart race. Emily, Richard whispered. You don't need to... Yes, I do. Emily stood up slowly. The room fell into absolute silence. I would like to speak, she said, her voice coming out firmer than she expected. Helen made a magnanimous gesture. Please, dear, use the microphone. Emily walked to the microphone, aware that each step was being recorded, photographed, analyzed. When she reached the podium, she looked directly at Helen. My name is Emily Wilson, she began. I am the daughter of Joseph Wilson, a construction worker who died at a Montgomery construction site in 2008. I've been a public defender for 10 years. And yes, I am in a relationship with Richard Montgomery. A murmur ran through the hall. Helen maintained a serene expression, but Emily saw something move in her eyes. Mrs. Montgomery is right about one thing, Emily continued. I knew the history of my family with the Montgomery family. I knew their company was responsible for my father's death. The journalists leaned forward, sniffing scandal. But Mrs. Montgomery is wrong about everything else. I'm not blackmailing anyone. I don't want money from the Montgomery family. In fact, I refused $500,000 that she offered me yesterday to stay away from her son. Helen went pale. She hadn't expected Emily to reveal the bribery attempt. And if you want to know why I'm in a relationship with Richard, despite our history, the answer is simple. Because I discovered he's not the monster I imagined. I discovered that he spent 15 years trying to get justice for workers killed at negligent construction sites. I discovered that he created social programs inspired by the compassion he saw in me when I was a teenager. Emily paused, observing the expressions in the room. Some journalists seemed genuinely interested in her version. But mainly, she continued, I discovered that sometimes love happens in the most unlikely places, between the most unlikely people, despite all the logical reasons for it not to happen. Helen stood up abruptly. That's a very nice speech, dear, but you're omitting crucial information. What information? The fact that my son killed his own brother. The room exploded. Journalists shouted questions, photographers triggered flashes, cameramen adjusted focus. Emily felt the world spin around her. Richard rose from his chair, his face livid. Mother, no. Yes, Richard, Helen said into the microphone. Tell everyone how you killed Marcus in a fit of jealousy because he was also interested in Miss Wilson. That's a lie, Richard shouted, walking toward the podium. Is it a lie? Helen smiled venomously. Then why did you confess to me the night he died? Why did you say you had sabotaged his car because you couldn't stand the idea of him having Emily? Emily felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. That version was completely different from what Richard had told her. It wasn't protection, it was jealousy. Richard, she said into the microphone, her voice trembling, is it true? He stopped halfway to the podium, his eyes fixed on hers. For long seconds, no one else existed in the room besides the two of them. Emily, is it true? Richard closed his eyes. When he opened them, there were tears. It's partially true. The room went into delirium. Shouts, questions, flashes. Emily held onto the edge of the podium to keep from fainting. "Explain that," she managed to say. "I did kill my brother, yes, but not just out of jealousy. He really was obsessed with you, really followed you, really was dangerous. But what made me act was discovering he had plans to kidnap you." Helen laughed, a cruel sound. "Plans that you invented to justify your crime." "I didn't invent them," Richard shouted, turning to his mother. "I found the plans in his apartment, maps of your house, your routine, photos of your door lock." "Plans that you put there," Helen replied. "Why would I do that?" "Because you were as obsessed with her as he was. The difference is that you were smarter." Helen's words were like blades cutting through Emily's soul. For long seconds, she tried to process what she was hearing. "Emily!" Richard approached the podium, ignoring the chaos around them. "Please, let me explain." "Explain right here," she said into the microphone, "in front of everyone. Since we've come this far." Richard looked at the journalists, at the cameras, at his mother who watched him with cruel satisfaction. Then he looked at Emily. "Okay," he said, approaching the microphone. "I'll tell the whole truth." The room quieted instantly. Everyone wanted to hear the confession. "I fell in love with Emily when she was 17, Richard began, his voice hoarse. "I saw her at her father's funeral, consoling her mother, being strong when she should have been devastated. And yes, for years I kept track of her life from a distance, not out of obsession, but because I felt responsible." "Responsible for what?" a journalist shouted. "Because my brother killed her father because of me." Helen opened her mouth to protest, but Richard continued. "Marcus discovered I was in love with Emily. Said if I couldn't have her, he would. When Joseph Wilson discovered the irregularities at the site and came to me, Marcus saw an opportunity. He killed Joseph to eliminate the problem of the irregularities and to hurt Emily, knowing that would hurt me." "And you killed him for revenge," a reporter suggested. "I killed him to protect Emily. And yes, also out of jealousy. Because when I found his plans to kidnap her, I realized he would never stop." Richard turned to Emily, completely ignoring the journalists. "I should have told you this from the beginning. I should have been completely honest about my motives, but I was afraid you would hate me even more." "And you think lying is better?" Emily asked, tears streaming down her face. "No. I think I'm a coward who doesn't deserve your forgiveness." Helen approached the microphone. "Now that the whole truth has been revealed, I hope Miss Wilson will make the sensible decision and stay away from my family." Emily looked at Helen, then at Richard, then at the room full of journalists thirsty for blood. Her entire life was being publicly dissected, her pain transformed into entertainment. "You want a statement?" she said into the microphone. "I'll give you a statement." The room fell into absolute silence. "Mrs. Montgomery is right. Richard lied to me. He omitted important information. He made decisions that affected me without my consent." Helen smiled triumphantly. "But Mrs. Montgomery is wrong about the main thing," Emily continued. "Richard is not a monster. He's a man who made terrible choices for human reasons. Love, jealousy, protection, revenge, feelings we all have, but not all of us have the courage to own up to." "Emily," Richard whispered. "And you know what else, Mrs. Montgomery?" Emily turned to the woman. "I choose him, even knowing everything, even knowing it's going to be difficult, even knowing you're going to try to destroy us." The room exploded again, but this time Emily didn't falter. "I choose him because true love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stay when everything says to leave. It's about building something new from old ruins." Richard walked to her, tears flowing freely down his face. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "I'm sure I want to try." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her right there, in front of all the cameras, all the journalists, his furious mother. It was a kiss of promise, of new beginning, of courage. When they separated, Richard took the microphone. "I'm resigning control of Montgomery Construction," he said. I'm going to sell my shares and use the money to create a foundation to support families of workers killed in workplace accidents. Emily will head this foundation. Helen went livid. You can't do that. I can, and I am. And if I disinherit you? Richard smiled, looking at Emily. Then I'll be a free man to love whoever I want. 3 months later, Emily was on the balcony of the new apartment she and Richard had bought together in Wicker Park, a middle-class neighborhood far from the ostentation of the elite. It was smaller than his apartment in Lincoln Park, but it had something the other never had. It was theirs. The Joseph Wilson Foundation had been officially created the week before. They already had 15 employees and were analyzing more than 100 cases of negligence at construction sites. Richard worked tirelessly, as if trying to repair every injustice his family had committed. Mary had taken 2 months to agree to speak to her daughter again. When they finally met, she cried when she saw Richard, but recognized the sincerity in his reparation efforts. He won't bring your father back, she told her daughter, but maybe he'll prevent other fathers from dying. Helen had fulfilled her threat to disinherit her son, but had also completely distanced herself from their lives. It was a price both were willing to pay. What are you thinking about? Richard asked, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. About how strange life is, Emily replied, accepting the cup. A year ago, if someone had told me I would be living with you, I would have laughed. And now? Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. Richard sat next to her, on the wooden bench they had bought at an antique fair. Any regrets? Millions of regrets, but none about you. They sat in silence, watching the movement on the street. Chicago remained a difficult, violent, unequal city, but for the first time in their lives, both felt they could make a difference. Emily, Richard said softly. Yes, I love you. I know. And do you love me? Emily turned to him, studying the face she had learned to love in all its details. The wrinkles around his eyes, the small scar on his chin, the way he smiled when he was truly happy. I love you, she finally said, despite everything, because of everything. Richard pulled her into a long, slow kiss. When they separated, he rested his forehead against hers. We did it, he murmured. Did what? Built something beautiful from ruins. Emily smiled, the first truly free smile she had given in months. It's just the beginning, she said. Yes, but what a beginning. And as the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky orange and pink, Emily Wilson and Richard Montgomery embraced on the balcony of their ordinary apartment, knowing they had found the kind of love that transforms not just 2 lives, but everything around them. They had ahead of them a foundation to run, injustices to repair, and a whole world of prejudices to face. But they had each other, and for now, that was more than enough. Emily's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Ms. Wilson? This is Grace Martinez from Evanston. My husband died at a Reed & Brothers construction site. I heard about your foundation on television. Can you help me? Emily looked at Richard, who nodded with a smile. Of course we can, she said into the phone. Let's schedule a meeting for tomorrow. And so, as night fell over the city that had united and separated them so many times, Emily and Richard began the rest of their lives, together, fighting for justice, building love on the most solid foundations possible, truth, forgiveness, and the courage to transform pain into purpose. Their love had been born of tragedy, grown in adversity, and blossomed in honesty. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real, they had learned, was more powerful than any fairy tale.